Okay, perfect. So yeah, hi everyone, good evening. I'm very happy to be here with you today. So what I'm going to talk, what I'm going to talk about is Janus, right? So Janus is a startup still in its infancy. It was born out of the research that I've done in the space of stablecoins. And this is actually the very first presentation that I'm doing on this topic. So if anyone wants to exchange views or to participate or anything, so that you know this, then more than happy to receive, to hear your feedback and your opinions. So a few words about what the build behind Janus, right? So we've seen stable coins come and go over the last few years, especially Terra Luna being the most prominent case in that space, right? And Janus is essentially an evolution of the stable coin concept. This now, there's like a buzzword now to define this concept, which is called flat coins. Not sure if you heard about it. That's a relatively new concept. And it's let's say our own version of this type of idea. So a few words about who I am. I guess I'm the CEO and the chief economist at Janus. I mean, we're still a small team, but hopefully we'll grow over the next few months before the bull run is here. My primary field of expertise is data science and AI, right? So I was doing it before I go to school. That's why I think I can actually use the term AI, right? So I have a PhD in machine learning from UCL. I'm also a chartered statistician. By the Statistical Society, data science advisor at LBS, and also participate in a few different institutions like the British Blockchain Association. So my career into economics actually started in around 2017, where what I did essentially, I was one of the first people to actually propose the use of agent-based modeling in tokenomics. And there was very anyone doing it back then. So there was a point in time, still, remains those days, where you would Google tokenomics and my blog would be number one. Yeah, that's no longer the case, unfortunately. Nothing lasts, but I was very happy back then. And I found myself actually doing some work in this area. Then I found myself deeper and deeper into it, doing research and all that, to the extent that now half of my work is in data science and AI, and the rest is in tokenomics. And what my career in tokenomics has really been about is about taking tools from traditional data science, statistics, machine learning, and carrying them over to that area. Which, that's like a side note. I think the state of tokenomics now is way better than it was in 2017, 18. But still, personally, I'm still surprised by the fact that there are methods and techniques in other fields, primarily finance, statistics, which haven't really been, are not being used yet in tokenomics, or many people in this area, like founders, economists, etc., are still oblivious about that. So it feels like the whole area is lagging behind by a few years by the rest, compared to the rest of the world. I've also written 3 books in data science and AI. I guess if you have any interest in this topic, just feel free to shoot me an email. I can share them with you. You don't want to buy them on Amazon because they're overpriced. They're priced as academic textbooks, so you're gonna pay 40 quid for a book that is this thick, which I think it's a bit it's not like a very good pricing. But yeah, I'm more than happy to share them with you. So this is like a layout of the presentation. I'll try to keep it a bit short because I'm mostly interested in having a discussion and hearing your opinions. I'll dive right into it, right? So what's the problem with traditional stablecoins? I guess the problem with this slide is that I should have added some pictures, but whatever, next iteration, I'll do it. So there are a few problems with stablecoins. One, as we saw with Terra Luna, is that if you have algorithmic stablecoins, you can have a system which is in theory efficient, but it can collapse at any moment in time, right? The other approach to the problem of creating a stablecoin is that you can have an asset that is collateralized and actually over-collateralized, right? So you can have DAI or you can have something like Tether. And then there are some issues there around how you achieve this kind of collateralization, how transparent you are, how centralized, how decentralized, and things like that, okay? But obviously, you can either go for something that's fairly efficient, but it's backed by real world assets, so it's not really decentralized, or you can go for something that's backed by crypto assets, and then it's over collateralized. And then DAI is an interesting case because it's a bit of a Frankenstein's monster. It's over collateralized, and then a significant part of that collateral is in other stablecoins, which is a bit crazy. On the other hand, what Terra Luna tried to do was a very beautiful concept, which was oversold, right? So they tried to create a system which was more efficient, and it was backed by, let's say, an underlying economy based on Terra, but they didn't understand there were certain risks associated with that model, and then eventually came crashing down. I remember, so Terra Luna was partially the inspiration behind this project, because I have actually done some of my research in stablecoins, and I've even audited a stablecoin, which is partially collateralized. So we had used data from different stablecoins around the peg to understand how the different decisions when designing that particular stablecoin called Bank X would affect the peg. And we could also use data from Terra Luna, right? And I remember while the whole Terra Luna drama was unfolding, I was, like refreshing Twitter like every 2 minutes. And I still remember some people with some analysis saying, oh, this is why Terra is gonna come back to the peg, and it happens X, Y, Z, bam, 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 bam. And also these people were right up to the point where the value was decreasing, and then it obviously crashed and they were no longer right, yeah. and this demonstrated, and actually Terra Luna was the inspiration for tokenomics auditing, which is what I find, I mean, most of my time learning tokenomics is spent in tokenomics auditing. I'm one of those people who tries to make Web3 a safer place, and I believe in the next bull run we're actually going to see tokenomics auditing rise in popularity. I know this because I have clients who asked me about this kind of service without ever me pitching this to them. Then I'm like, oh, actually, wait, that's a thing, so maybe I should actually start saying, yeah, I can do that as well. And this is really, it's an evolution of the concept of smart contracts auditing. Terra Luna proved that, yeah, pretty much any project needs this. So the idea behind Janus is that we should look into some kind of sustainable store of wealth, right? And my idea is some kind of sustainable means of transaction. I know this sounds a bit like fluffy. You're like, yeah, Bitcoin could do this, but in reality, Bitcoin doesn't really provide any guarantees, right? So you can say it's like gold, so it's a store of wealth. There's strong belief around that, but it doesn't really provide any guarantees around what the price should be, right? And then stablecoins face the issues that I outlined earlier. So this is where Janus comes into play, as well as this pretty cool picture. I mean, yeah, one of my team members is really great with this kind of stuff. We don't never come up with this myself. So the idea behind Janus is that's the flat coin. So I mean, okay, the fun fact is I didn't know that flat coin was a thing until a few months ago, because this concept is like 1 year old, right? Which means that probably if I came up with this idea, I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a wave of these types of projects over the next few months, because I think it's actually a pretty good idea. I do hope our instantiation of this idea is the best one. Maybe I'm wrong, right? But I do think that at least 1 or 2 of those projects are going to survive in the long run. Hopefully that's us, right? So the idea behind Janus is that we try to solve this conundrum around stablecoins, and essentially the way I came up with it was like, okay, so what if you just say you had something like Terra Luna or like Fracture or whatever, but you remove the requirement of the hard peg, and instead of that, you replace the hard peg with a soft peg. And then to that soft peg, then that can attach arbitrary conditions like, oh, there should be a certain inflation rate. And then you can add some stochastic guarantees, all right? Because I'm a statistician and also a data scientist, I just love throwing words like stochastic. Makes you sound smarter. But the idea is that, look, instead of saying this should be pegged to the dollar, then you can say, yeah, it can be pegged to the dollar and the inflation rate within a 20% error margin. And then there's a guarantee that the price is going to be within a certain range over X time window, okay? Obviously, it sounds complicated, but there's no free lunch, all right? So the thing is that if you say, hey, I have a hard peg, then you face catastrophic collapse due to the total loss of belief as soon as, the peg, as soon as you're just a little bit off the peg, right? And the percentage off the peg, like the tolerance of the community, to this kind of scenario, you're not gonna know what the tolerance is until it's too late, right? So flat coins essentially is a more forgiving system. So you're like, okay, I'm willing to trade off a few things. The main thing you're trading off is the guarantee that price is going to be X at T equals 0 in exchange for safety and sustainability, right? So the project is called Janus because of an obsession with Greek and Roman mythology, and because it's a two-token ecosystem, right? So Janus is the two-faced god, so we thought, yeah, this actually sounds pretty cool. And the idea is that you do have these two tokens that they balance each other out, right? So essentially the rough idea is that these two tokens are essentially interchangeable, and then there's a financial layer underneath, which is going to be structured by products like bonds, borrowing, lending, things like that. And then ideally other applications built on top of that. And then the supply and the demand is going to be essentially not controlled, is going to be incentivized through all these different products. Oh, come on, I thought I deactivated the Wi-Fi, sorry about that. In a way that there's a stabilizing effect, right? So that's like a simulation I did, okay? So it's obviously a simulation, it's just a model of the real world, but it's kind of what we'd expect to see in, let's say, an ideal version of the work where this protocol has launched and is operating as expected to operate. So let's say that our goal is for the price of the tokens to achieve a certain appreciation over a certain period of time. Our goal is also for the volatility to not exceed a certain amount, so we don't want to see this kind of, you know, hockey stick or exponential growth or whatever. And the protocol balances the demand and the supply between the two tokens through different incentives to burning mechanisms, and you see this kind of oscillating effect. Yeah. So that's basically what we're working on. And we say Janus creates its own demand. It's like a bit of a, let's say, slogan to express this type of mechanism, how the two tokens play against one another. Obviously, that's not an easy task, right? So, you know, obviously you have to use AI, first of all, because it's the buzzword of our times. And as I said, I think I can actually use this buzzword because I have written 3 books in this area. But okay, jokes aside, this protocol, it's quite complex in 2 different areas. It's one of the reasons that, you know, this is also a call for collaborators. One area is financial engineering, right? Financial engineering, structural token economics, as I like to call them, game theory, things like that. And the other part is that you do need to have predictive models to say, look, based on the market conditions, you know, that's what we expect to see is going to happen over the next days, weeks, etc. And take certain measures. I guess in its final version, I mean, the way we envision it is that the protocol should work through a combination of algorithms, which are going to make automated decisions to balance the demand and the supply of the two tokens, plus governance. Okay, so I guess the idea is that governance would be dealing with some of the longer-term strategic decisions, and then the algorithm would deal with more like short-term volatility. But obviously, as I mentioned earlier, there's a stochastic component to it. So when you hear stochastic components, then yeah, you have to talk about probability distributions, statistical models, AI, and so on and so forth. Which, I mean, let's be honest, it's not easy. Plus, the thing is that when a protocol is first launching, we're not going to have any data for that protocol specifically, right? So it's a bit challenging, but I don't think it is insurmountable, right? And obviously, in order for this to have legs, like we can't just, like the previous speaker, sorry, I don't remember your name, but but you made some great points about layer 2s and how they need to reach a critical mass of users to actually be useful or sustainable. And that's the case with these types of projects, whether we're talking about an algorithmic stablecoin, a partially collateralized stablecoin, or this type of flat coin. You do need to have a mass of users before there is enough belief in the community to actually make the system sustainable. Belief is a bit of an abstract concept, but it's something that even if we can't really quantify it, we know it's there because we see the ecosystem working. So one of the things that we want to work on is to use this as a financial layer for other applications to build upon. like for applications that would benefit from these kind of guarantees, from the guarantees of these two tokens, where essentially they guarantee that the system is going to survive and you're going to get the price that you want to get within a certain period of time. It's just you have to sacrifice. I mean, the trade-off is that you don't guarantee the price right now at time equals 0. And then we're also planning to add some other mechanisms like liquidity ownership. Some of those mechanics probably I don't have to expand too much upon. The interest rates, token locks and fees. Yeah, probably maybe it's best if we discuss this in the Q&A. Like, that's just going to comprise like the basic financial layer of Janus, like pretty much in or like DeFi protocol, you'll be able to do things like stake, bonds, etc. And in terms of future developments, I mean, where we're at now is still like in the ideation stage, right? So we do have simulation, we do have a white paper, the basic structure of the token economy is there, and yeah, we hope, you know, we do believe this has legs, and we hope to take it into the next stage. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe that if we came up with this concept, then a few months later, the term flat coins came about, and then you know, it looks like this is a thing. We're pretty sure that we're going to be seeing more of that in the next bull run. Again, if anyone finds this fascinating, I'm more than happy to have a conversation. And yeah, that was pretty much it. As I mentioned, I wanted to keep it short. And you know, I'm pretty open to questions, and you know, I'd like to hear your views and opinions. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I have a few questions. So the Janus A, Janus B thing reminds me, because you said governance and some from the yield.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of the thing that had at Terra Luna with the Y Luna, P Luna.
Oh yeah, but it's not gonna be exactly like, it's not gonna be like that. So the idea is that the tokens, they're essentially interchangeable. So it's not like you have a stable coin and then, you know, some other token or a governance token. And if there's going to be any differentiating factor between them, something which we're debating is whether the differentiating factor might be around the financial products that they support, right? But because our goal is to do this, sorry, where's the graph? Yeah, this. So we want them to be essentially kind of interchangeable, right? I guess one of the things that we want to research is whether it actually makes sense to keep them, you know, the underlying mechanics exactly the same, or say, yeah, you know, actually one token is going to be more heavy on borrowing and lending, and the other on bonds and staking or whatever.
Yeah, because in this case, when they did the yield and the governance one, the yield one was whatever they wanted, and then the governance one had a much different price.
Yeah.
Yield one. And then one last question was, have you looked into the new finance stablecoin and flatcoin market that
No.
with Trueflation?
Oh, translation, yeah.
That is supposed to be pegged to the inflation rate in the US at 1 times.
Oh yeah, actually maybe I did. Yeah, I have to look into it. But yeah, actually, inflation is one of the things we're considering to say, yeah, we're gonna try. It's one of the narratives now with inflation.
It's trading way below that 20% plus or minus. So.
It's always a problem. That's why I'm so obsessed about the stochastic component. Okay, maybe I'm geeking out because I'm a data scientist, right? So I'm kind of looking for excuses to use this kind of tools. But I do think that if you could guarantee some kind of finality over a certain period of time, and say, hey, if I cannot guarantee the finality, then there's going to be some kind of penalty for the protocol or some other kind of financial compensation, you can combine stochastic modeling with financial incentives to make something that works. But it's a different problem, right? And but I do believe that the crypto community has reached a level of sophistication where the users will not shy away from an idea like that. And I'm saying this because pretty much all of my career has been around startups and scale-ups, and I'm seeing this with AI. It's very difficult to express highly sophisticated ideas, like to investors, to users, to communities. So I think there's one community, one space where you can actually, you don't have to shy away from this kind of complexity. It's crypto.
So how does it work to clarify, right?
Yes.
These flat coins are like an extension of, sorry, evolution of stable coins that track inflation.
Yes, but they don't have to track inflation. You could track something else. But it is an evolution of the stablecoin concept.
So they're not pegged, they're not like under collateralized, are they?
No, they're not bad. It's literally, that's how I came up with the concept, and that's why I realized, I mean, I've seen this in my career many times, and it also happens in science in general. Like someone comes up with an idea and then they're like 10 other people with the same idea. It literally, like if you say, hey, I have a stablecoin and I remove the requirement for a hard peg, you're like, hey, this can actually be a continuous function or whatever. And then boom, you have a flat coin. But then obviously once you say, hey, I no longer need to have a hard peg, then you can have anything. Trueflation is, I guess, a very good idea because of whole inflation act, right? You can start tracking indices, you can start looking into finality over different time horizons, and that's also a bit arbitrary.
But just like stablecoins, you would need some kind of oracle to, I don't know, gather your information and feed into whatever crunches.
Absolutely.
Numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. Yeah, you do need an oracle for that,
I
right?
say this because I've got extensive work in stablecoins myself.
Okay, yeah, but we should definitely, talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, like one of the key features, that's why I'm also obsessed so much about this stochastic finality, is that if you also want this to be a medium of exchange and not just a gimmick, then you need to be able to guarantee some kind of price over a certain period. And this would actually make it a good medium of exchange for certain types of applications, depending on the market. Not like for fast transactions, like to buy a sandwich or something, but maybe for certain business transactions, like invoices and stuff. I don't know. That's my assumption.
So how does the deposited Ethereum will be used by? It's going to stay there, like it's going to be used for.
So that's the thing, that we're going to have these financial products, right? So essentially, we're like, oh, you have borrowing, lending, and bonds, and all that stuff. But essentially, this is going to be used as collateral for this ecosystem. Like the idea is that you're going to be using initially these tokens to pay fees, and then you can also use these tokens to issue rewards, right? Obviously, there's the problem which we've seen a lot with airdrops and with very scammy protocols, primarily in the gaming space, where you just issue rewards and they don't have any substance. So you need to make sure that any rewards which are issued create this demand effect, like the previous speaker showed with layer 2s, but they can be absorbed by the market.
So basically, everyone investing here, they know that they might lose all the Ethereum that they.
No. We wouldn't hold custody. Like there's going to be like a penalty for a late withdrawal, but our current working for early withdrawal, but our current model is it would be based on some kind of certificate of deposit or something like
It's
that.
going to be 100% backed that you will get back your Ethereum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but also it's one of the problems. Like there are always trade-offs, right? It's one of the reasons that we like. Hey, initially we'd probably need strong financial backing and belief to take it from here to there, and then probably you need a community to start building on top of this and say, yeah, actually this is going to back the rest of the protocol. This will actually be one of the most challenging aspects, the most challenging. You can't say that there's just even if the math work out, you still need a significant amount of users. Yeah,
Do you
sure.
have the white paper?
Yeah, we do. I can share it with you. Yeah, shoot me an email. I can share it with you. Feel free, like, to rip it apart. That's what we need at this stage.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. I see you've been raising your hand for a while. Sorry about that.
So two questions. The first one is, what are the obvious use cases that people can build on top of your protocol? And the second one is, and I imagine it's still very early for that, but how do you envision creating a yield, high enough but safe enough so that you can have a sustainable community and user growth that people depositing ETH while not going overboard with the risk and putting
Yeah. So my
I know
opinion.
it's very early for the latter question.
No,
but
actually, that's a
it's
great
not
question.
The use cases and what you can build.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question because in the long run, I think you do need use cases with solid utility. What we've seen in practice, because I've been in economics for years, is that this whole idea of just issuing rewards without any real backing, it can fool people, it can fool investors. It's going to work in a bull run, and then it's going to collapse, right? So in the early stages, the truth is there's not going to be much backing, right? So we can say, hey, you own, your liquidity, you own the money you give us, and this could actually, collapse, and we're just going to lose investors' money. And we do need to get through this period in order to build, a mass of users and find partners that will be willing to develop applications properly. So what would these applications be? Going back to some of the benefits of using a flat coin, say, yeah, maybe, you know, flat coin is a great concept for invoice financing. You know, so it doesn't have to be something sexy. I think the best utility in this case would be some boring application which exists in the real mainstream financial world, which just happens to work better here. Like decentralized exchanges are another very good concept. If you have an exchange, everyone needs an exchange. I mean, not everyone who's in finance needs an exchange. Then you build a 24/7 exchange that, you know, doesn't need an intermediary, so it's a better concept. So I guess at the early stage, things, for better or for worse, are mostly based on belief in investors' money. Obviously, we do know that their rewards will not be sustainable unless we manage to hit certain number of users and some partnerships by month 6 or 12 or so. Yeah, we just how things work.
Do you have an idea how much, I would say, you know, TVL you use, for example, is to be sustainable? Roughly.
Yeah, that's a difficult one because it also depends on the interest rates, right? I guess which in certain ways makes our life more difficult because if that's, I mean, something which we find challenging here is that we can't say, oh, the TVL is 5% because that's no longer attractive. At the same time, we had a conversation with an investor, which is like, where's my 100x? So this guy and his business partner were coming from this NFT kind of, you know, bullshit nonsense space. I mean, I've done some work in NFTs, but they were essentially expecting just like 100x out of thin air within a few weeks, right? And that's not why we're here, because our protocol is built for stability. We even considered pivoting some aspects of the protocol, creating some kind of governance token to maybe have some separate token which could go 20x or 100x, but it doesn't affect the, you know, the core of the protocol, simply because of the push by some investors to, you know, towards that direction, where they're like, oh, this is, you know, how we like to invest in this type of scenario. Which again, I'm not sure if it would be a wise decision. So yeah, I'd say maybe something like 10-15% at least, right? But then again, the thing is, if you do have partners that are creating real utility, yeah, again, going back like to, could be to invoice financing, could be to be used as a medium of exchange, then you don't worry about it as much, right? So it could be some kind of layer 1 for financial applications, for example. I think this is kind of what Terra Luna also wanted to do. It's just like the concept is fundamentally flawed. And I still think they could have saved it, you know, if they weren't so arrogant, if they had managed the treasury better, I think they could have saved it. That's my opinion. Yeah.
Did you use ETH as an example, as collateral, or is that
It's an example.
Is that the main asset you've grown up?
Yeah, it's an example. I mean, we don't have strong opinion as to whether it should be the main one. It might not be a bad idea to use ETH. We kind of need something which is, you know, more trusted and more established. But yeah, I guess it could be stablecoin. I don't think that's a very important problem right now. You know, after we solve everything else, this might actually just depend on the market dynamics. Yeah.
Sure. So you talked about these like scholastic adjustments to it.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, how does that, like, how would it work in practice, and what's the time frame of it? So would it be adjusting the parameters of the protocol once every 3 months, like Maker, or is it like an AI actively trading against these things all the time?
Yeah, both. So in the short run, the idea is that you see, for example, one token is overheating, and then you're like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to you know, increase the supply of that token, and then maybe I'll start burning this token, and then, or I will create some vaults where a vault is a catch-all term for things like, you know, bonds, staking, CDs. So, and in order to access these vaults, you need token A, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, now I have to get token A. You get token A starts increasing, it goes above token B, and then you're like, okay, now maybe I'll start issuing more rewards in this token, and then, so an algorithm would be able to deal with this pretty effectively, but you see where the AI and the predictive component comes into play. Now, obviously, in the long run, where governance is needed is in things like, what are we tracking? Are we tracking trueflation? Are we tracking gold? Are we tracking, I don't know, some kind of weighted combination of these things, which eventually might create an index, which I'm not sure if it's the right idea. One reason you need governance for that is because you do need to have this kind of belief in what the system is trying to achieve, And what better way to do this than actually have an active community saying that's what we're trying to do, we're aligned behind this. So while the algorithm is, it's trying to satisfy certain constraints that, the range here shouldn't be too far apart, and, the price that the tokens appreciate at a certain price level and blah, 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 then the governance is going to deal with some of the more long-term objectives.
Okay, that's interesting. So, have you started researching into, doing research into how to connect the AI and through oracles and stuff? And would the community want a black box closed AI, or would they want an open source AI? Do you feel like the community wants one or the other?
That's a very good point. So I don't worry too much about the AI because that's my comfort zone, even if it might seem a bit of a difficult problem. From a community perspective, I guess the question is whether it would make sense to have some super duper AI created by 10 people in a dark room plus me, or whether we would need something like Numerai, where we're like, that's actually open, so we do have our super algorithm, but then anyone else can create their own super algorithm, and then we just create a weighted combination, which it might actually be a better idea.
Yeah, because usually the community in cryptocurrency, they are pro open source,
Yeah.
everything to be open.
Yeah, this might actually be a good idea to have some kind of competition and say, hey, the objective is to forecast the prices and optimize this and that, and then depending on the performance, you get certain bonuses.
But then the problem is, if the AI code is open, then would that create a problem where you know what the AI is going to do and you can front run it?
Potentially, but also it depends on the financial incentives, right? So far, we've not taken speculation so much into account. We've mostly concerned with how this demand and supply dynamics could play out, depending on things like token burns and creating these vaults and things like that. I'm not sure if front running is so much.
Front running, but if you know what the AI is going to do, then you can, do a massive short or do something.
There is a potential, there is a potential for speculation, but I guess, it wouldn't be the traditional type of front running though, right? It would be a type of more sophisticated front running where you're like, maybe I can replicate the model, I can see how these predictions will play out, and then, I can make certain decisions. I guess you can still add an element of randomization into it to make it more difficult, whether it's randomization between different models, whether it's instead of making a single prediction, you sample from a distribution. So there will be some ways to go around it. That's actually a very good point. We probably have to think deeper about this. Yeah.
So I understand the dynamics between the two, and when you have like an entry point, which is your mint, and you put some collateral down
Yeah.
like this, and then you can use some more collateral into the other thing, and then possibly you could exchange between them when one goes away or where the other one is, etc., and then wait for the other one to go above, and there's some incentives there. But if you put those tokens in a AMM, in the liquidity pool, then how do you deal with this kind of risk, right? Because you have, with new finance, for example, you will get a completely different guarantee on price on deposit and withdraw versus trading on the liquidity pool, right? So, essentially my question is, you have a guaranteed price on deposit and then on withdraw with some fee that they are paying to withdraw, but then how do you control, without having your own kind of market making trading board, let's say, to control the outside price?
Yeah, so are you talking about the underlying assets or the tokens?
For the underlying, let's say Janus A and Janus B.
Yeah, because one of the solutions we're considering is that, let's say if you, the way this would work is you say, hey, I'm going to take ETH, for example, I'm going to put one ETH into a vault, into some other smart contract, bond, whatever you want to call it, and then I have to pay a small fee in token B, but then I'm going to get a large reward in token A, right? So that's like a bit of a simplistic solution to solve a problem of not having to guarantee any kind of return in ETH in that aspect. So in the early days, you're like, hey, you're just paying a very small fee in token B, which is like kind of useful for us because you're moving the market, and then we're going to give you a large reward in token A, which maybe you're like, okay, that's super speculative, but you're not losing anything because, you just have this ETH sitting over there. That being said, you're going to be like, why wouldn't someone invest their money elsewhere? Because it's actually a great point, and this is, to be honest with you, it comes back to belief, right? Because it's the same argument as in, oh, why not invest in S&P 500, why not invest in gold, why not invest in whatever. So this is kind of where these investors really come into play, right? So we would need this initial kick, this initial push to say, hey, there's actually a few $1 million here, so there's something happening. And then someone would be like, oh, if I actually wait 2 or 3 years, it's gonna go, to, or not to the moon, but hopefully to some realistic valuation.
And with the ETH idea, do you have any kind of plan to maybe get some liquid staking kind of ETH version and then extract some sort of yield out of that?
Yeah, well, we do, but the way we see it is that because there's nothing new under the sun, right? So these ideas, even liquid staking, it's just derivatives, okay? So it doesn't matter whatever fancy terminology is being used. So the way I see it is that you do these vaults that will be classified by risk. So from the super safe, boring vault, which I mentioned earlier, you just give me some ETH, I'm going to give you some tokens, and we pray we're actually going to be here next year. This will have, this will be 10x or whatever, all the way to you're just giving us some tokens, and then we actually invest this, or we use a bot, or we do algo trading or whatever. At that point, you start looking at a bit more like BlackRock or something like that, right? So obviously that's on the table, but managing, because again, all the techniques and the methods are there, but I guess the problem with this idea is that I don't want to say on a white paper or publicly, oh, it's just gonna give us, your assets and we're so amazing in trading, or we have a team XYZ that we're going to, give you back 20 or 30% or whatever, because at that point you're competing in the trading space, right? So I think the right way to balance this is to actually make sure that whatever you're doing in this area and the products you release in the market and the type of risk you expose your users to, well, first of all, the users should be aware of those risks, but then it works well alongside the protocol's growth in the community, right? So actually decentralization is a good way to solve these kinds of issues, because what I want to avoid saying is, yeah, we run a company and we just have the best data scientists who are going to give you the best returns, right? So I do believe that because decentralization is one of the main, aspects of crypto, maybe even the main one, that decentralizing these types of ideas involves less risk also for the protocol itself, and the founders. So where I'm going with this is that ideally, if we could, for example, decentralize the AI behind it to some extent, maybe we could even decentralize the vaults eventually, right? So there could be 5-10% of those vaults would be highly speculative, but maybe with high potential returns, and then half of them would be operated by Janus, and then 50% of the rest would be operated by whomever trader or so on and so forth.
I have a lot more questions probably after this.
Okay, so yeah, it branches out exponentially, right? That's why I'm it actually started as a concept where I'm actually this could work. And then we realized that in order for this to work well, it probably needs to be at a very large scale. But something which gives us, at least gives me reassurance, is what I mentioned earlier, that there's nothing new under the sun. So when I say in crypto, liquid staking, and this and that, and the yield, and why should someone invest in this and that, I'm these problems exist in mainstream finance, right? And a lot about this is how to make sure that you ground it in real utility, you can manage communities and belief accordingly, which again, I'm coming back to this, and look, I'm a data scientist, so I'm not super comfortable talking about things which cannot be quantified, but it's something that we've seen, it's just super important, right? This is how crypto works. And that's more or less our strategy. I would personally be very happy we can kick off a basic version with, let's say, 2 or 3 vote options, some investment. We say, hey, we got this running, so it's live. And at that point, hopefully you can create singularity where enough people are like, hey, actually this could work, right? Which is what happened with Bitcoin. I'm not saying we're trying to create a new type of Bitcoin, but it's again a similar effect, right? At some point there's a singularity point, and you're like, okay, now we live in a different world. Most people accept, or a significant mass of users accept. It doesn't have to be most people in the world, it's just enough of them. Which again, if you ask me, I don't know how many of them would be, because it depends also on the money that flows into the system, right? So if you say we have a small number of users, but then we start building B2B partnerships, again, for invoice financing, which seems to be an interesting case for this, or something similar, then maybe that's all you need for now. Yeah.
From what I can see, there is a nearly perfect -1 correlation between the price A and price B.
Mhm.
Everything is still trending upwards, which I really
That's by design. It's the ideal,
driven by-
our ideal vision, the ideal version.
It's
Yes.
just, which is once again nicer correlates with the investor money burned involved along the way.
Mhm.
But how would you tread if the overall trajectory wasn't, a very nice, good-looking bull market one, but was a bear market one? So if everything was still trending downwards from the inception point,
Mhm.
and the whole rebalancing is fine and everything, but if the whole ecosystem of the protocol keeps trending downwards, how do we navigate that and sort of reverse the trend along the way? Or
Well, you can't always reverse a trend, so let's face it. So the question is, how do you make sure that even if things are going to hell, then you can still provide some guarantees to your users so that Terra Luna doesn't repeat itself, right? So this is where this whole idea of stochastic finality and blah, blah, blah come into play. So we've not finalized this, but we could say, hey, you actually wanted to perform a transaction, you're under a smart contract, and we guaranteed that the price would be at least X by that point in time. So if this is not achieved, then maybe, we promise that we're going to give you some rewards once this price is achieved, which then incentivizes the user to actively try and stabilize the price. We're kind of like looking a lot into this type of a combination of market making and these types of game theoretic mechanisms where the users are actually incentivized to not speculate, but say, hey, if something's not working out, then I have to push the system to try and make it work because then I'm going to get some extra reward, right? So that's the main concept. Obviously, again, you can't guarantee it's going to work 100%, but that's a very good point, right? I mean, there are so many protocols which just fail during the bear market, and one of the most common problems is this over-dependence on rewards and high emissions, and also the fact that many of them are not necessarily dynamic, they're not really tracking what's happening in the market, and so on and so forth. But yeah, game theory would be, let's say, the main mechanism to try to solve this. But open to ideas as well, It's like we have all these bits and pieces, hopefully, it can all work together. That's the idea. So like an analogy here is like, the thing with tokenomics is that, again, there's nothing new under the sun, right? So with my clients, I always say that if you want to understand the token economy, just talk about rewards and this and that and all this fancy terminology. It's a lot like a real world economy, right? So you have inflows, you have outflows, you have a trade surplus, things like that. So the way this works is that these are like two economies which are very closely linked with each other, right? So you just impact the rate incentive structure and the influx to make sure that this is sustainable. So we're kind of following like these principles here. But yeah, I guess that's a very ideal version of the work, like you said. But again, if the users know a priori that look, if this fails, then I can get some reward if I take certain actions. They already know the game they're playing, right? So for me, this kind of honesty is very important, and I think it's something which wasn't there in the previous bull run because we saw so much bullshit, especially like with Terra Luna, Doug Von saying, "Die by my hand will die," and this kind of bullshit. The whole thing with play to earn, which was pure insanity fueled by the bull run.
Is it possible to have, for example, like insurance companies that we look at your stochastic program? And then maybe say you have maybe 99.99% probability that is going to
This would actually be ideal.
Be sustainable or not, but if not, you still have insurance company that takes the risk. Maybe you pay a little bit of premium.
Actually, that's a genius idea. You know why? Because I think one of the ways to make DeFi projects more successful is one of the parts of DeFi, which many projects for whatever reason are completely ignoring, is you can plug in into existing financial infrastructure. And I think what you suggested is actually a very, very great idea. Like here, there are these insurance companies, and if insurance in Web3 takes off, then we can say, hey, we just plug into this layer, we don't have to do anything ourselves, which makes our life easier,
This is a two-token or three-token system, because you mentioned in the slides that you deposit ETH at Janus A and you receive
It's going to be 2 tokens, so that's the idea. You have these 2 tokens, and then
you deposit 2 tokens, you receive a third.
No. You receive 1 token, and then you get rewarded in the other one. So maybe you deposit ETH, and maybe you deposit 1 Janus A token, and then we promise that we're going to reward you in 3 months with 3 Janus B tokens, right? So that's how it starts. Obviously, this looks like a Ponzi if you just leave it like that, right? So this is where everything else I mentioned comes into play. So otherwise it looks a lot like Olympus DAO, which is not like our intention. But, I mean, to be fair to them, Olympus DAO did something very smart because it started off as a Ponzi, and now they're creating their own version of this type of concept. Not exactly like a flat coin, but if you see their latest iteration of the protocol, it's pretty smart. They've built this belief now in assets, and they're working on creating essentially a store of wealth backed by an algorithm to induce stability. I really like the way they did it. Yeah.
All right, I think that's a wrap. Thank you very much. So everyone, what we're doing next, we're going over the road to the Queen's Arms pub for a cheeky Christmas drink. In December, we're having a proper party with Graph Protocol. So we're going to be in Curve Club. So if you want to be a VIP, send us a message. Tell me you were here. Sorry? Graph, yeah. They're paid for it.
Ah, nice.
Oh, do you? Nice. Or get yourself on the VIP list.
What exactly is going to happen?
17th of December. And then in January, it's our birthday month. So we're thinking of like going down the AI rabbit hole, blockchain and AI. So if anyone's got some contacts they can help us with, and the AI companies, we can.
Can we give Sam Altman?
He'll be CEO of some London company by then, won't he?